Yesterday, Gutekunst said that the plan is his hope is to make a decision on Bakhtiari, what to do with him before the new league year starts on March 13th. And so, with that being the case, there's a chance we see Bakhtiari released around that time. There's a chance that there's some kind of injury settlement. There's also a chance that, honestly, it's pretty confusing if you ask me. I think there's lots of things that I don't even know that could happen here regarding the contract. Some kind of extension that cheapens his deal for the next couple seasons. That seems less ideal to me. I think the best case scenario is finding a way to release him without him filing an injury grievance, which, could or could not happen. But here's the news from Rob Demovsky, who said this on ESPN.com, his article yesterday. This is one excerpt. So here's a paragraph. In theory, the Packers could wait until Bakhtiari completes his recovery, and it wouldn't cost them any cash because Bakhtiari has no offseason roster bonus, and his salary is not guaranteed. Bakhtiari, who this fall underwent the 4th and 5th surgeries in his left knee since he tore his ACL on December 31st, 2020, is not expected to be cleared until training camp at the earliest. He has played in just 13 games since his initial injury. He played in only the season opener last season. So that is some breaking news from yesterday. Rob Demovsky saying that probably, according to his sources, which he's got some good sources, he reports lots of Packers news throughout the year, but that Bakhtiari not expected to be cleared until training camp at the earliest. So it sounds like we're having another similar situation we've had in our hands the past couple of years, which is honestly just unfortunate for Bakhtiari, unfortunate for the Packers. They gave him that massive contract a few years back, and right after it tears his ACL, and then there's complication after complication after complication, and it's just a tough spot to be in for both sides, both Bakhtiari and the Packers. And so now with the news that he may not even be ready for training camp, earliest will be training camp, which is, bad news from my perspective. I thought that maybe he'd be okay in a few months' time because we had heard Gutekunst say that Bakhtiari is still in the middle of his recovery. And so we knew that, but I thought that he would be ready before training camp because training camp's late July. We're currently about to be the beginning of March. We got March, April, May, June. So 5 or so months for Bakhtiari to be healthy at the earliest. And that just complicates things in my opinion. We talked about how with Bakhtiari and the injury grievance, I did a whole video on that per some NFL rules. If a player is injured and they get released while they're still injured and unable to play on the same contract, the player can file an injury grievance. So technically, if the Packers wanted to release Bakhtiari around March 13th, I believe he could file an injury grievance. But my guess would be that the Packers wouldn't release him unless they know Bakhtiari wouldn't file an injury grievance. And I don't know how that could go. Is it possible that they talk with Bakhtiari and say it's best if we part ways here? Hopefully you can go find another team. If Bakhtiari says, okay, maybe he just lets it go through. Or, I've seen some talk about a potential injury settlement, and I'm not completely sure how that works. I have seen that there could potentially, you have to see, okay, how many games will this guy miss, and then sort of pay him accordingly. Let's see, if the projection was he would miss 4 games, you have to pay him for those 4 games. So there's there's a ton of different scenarios that could go down here with Bakhtiari, and honestly, I'm just sitting back here, really just waiting to see what's going to happen because we can make our predictions and throw out all these different kinds of ideas. But we're not going to know officially what happens here until the Packers make a decision. And it seems like there should be one based on what Brian Gutekunst said yesterday, likely before March 13th, which is about 2 weeks away now. And so the Packers, a lot of what the Packers are going to be able to do this offseason will come down to how this David Bakhtiari situation is handled. Because if they are able to release him and clear all that money off their books, at least he's currently, Bakhtiari has a $40 million cap hit for 2024. If they release him, it saves around $20 to $21 million. And so if they are able to release him, let's just say simply, they somehow release him, there's no injury grievance filed. Let's say that happens. That means the Packers have around $20, $21 million extra to play around with in free agency if they want to. That doesn't mean they're going to go out and spend a ton of money on someone necessarily. But if they like someone and that potential player costs a good amount of change, then having Bakhtiari release gives them a lot more flexibility and room to operate. I think that if for some reason, let's say Bakhtiari stays at $40 million on the cap, which I think something's going to get done. Bakhtiari even said a year ago that there's going to have to be something done with his contract because he recognized a year ago in some interview I saw and back in 2023 in the offseason that he understood that being a $40 million cap hit as a left tackle on the Packers next season just wasn't going to happen. And so we're going to have to wait and see what happens here. But if, let's say, it does somehow happen, which I give it a close to 0% chance of him just staying at $40 million, I don't see how that makes sense for the Packers at all. That does make things a little more tight on the salary cap, and obviously getting about $20 million more dollars, you have a lot more room to operate. So this is going to be one of the biggest things to watch in the next couple of weeks when it comes to the Packers. And then, of course, we have some free agents who the Packers will have to make decisions on if they bring back or not. And I think it's very likely lots of these free agents, guys like Darnell Savage, Keyshawn Nixon, Yosh Nijman, Josiah DeGuara, could be picked up by other teams. And we've talked about that a little bit on this channel already. And I gave us some predictions on who would be back, who wouldn't be back. So that is the most recent news on David Bakhtiari, and we'll keep an eye on that one. So if you guys want to, stay up to date with all this Bakhtiari talk, feel free to keep listening to this channel. Also, podcasts, you can search Packers Sideline Scoop Podcasts. And I think it's definitely on Spotify, definitely on iTunes. I know there's more podcasts out there, which you can potentially listen to. I know there's a few others I have it on, but I need to just make sure with that. But if you are watching on YouTube, I also have this posted onto as a podcast. So you can check that out if you want to see more stuff over there. If you're just watching on YouTube, feel free to review it as well.